What's up, everybody? We're proud to be on YouTube for the first time, and we're going to also be still putting it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, just like it has been for all you guys that like to listen, going back and forth to work like I do. And on today's episode, we're going to have our first history-based episode in a while. We're going to do our top 10 favorite paint schemes of all time, and plus maybe a couple of honorable mentions. I think we both could have put like 50 on here if we could have.
Yeah, as you see here, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening, you're just going to have to Google these wherever you get time. But Jonathan actually has his in possession. I will be showing mine on my TV screen behind me. I made a PowerPoint. I feel like I'm back in ninth grade again. But yeah, I'm really excited. Like you said, we hadn't done a history-based one in quite some time. So very excited. And yeah, I'll say this before you even get started. Even if it made my top 10, I had to sit here for probably 30 minutes today just to organize which ones I was going to put them in, because 1 and 2, man, I almost cried over. 2 just has a much more sentimental value to me, and 1's just best paint scheme. So I don't want to spoil anything else before we get there. So,
well, I will say this: Brett's way, if you're not single, is the best way to go about it, because I risked my marriage to be able to do this video every week at auction. Just so y'all know, the slideshow version is the best way for you married people. Trust me.
I only have 2 die cast in my apartment, like the 124s. I'll show them at some point, but yeah, I only have 2 of them. So you ready to get going?
Yeah, you want to open up with your number 10? I guess we'll go that route.
I can. So just for those watching, I will have multiple pictures for some of these. So number 10, we're going to start off with Bobby Labonte's interstate battery scheme. So you see this first one here. It was really almost kind of similar to what Dale Jarrett ran when he won the 500 over there at JGR. And then this one was when Bobby won his championship, also when he won the Brickyard. But this is the one that I'm really talking about. Early 2000s, the car actually Bobby Labonte won his final race in with the lightning bolt down the side. That is my all-time favorite interstate batteries paint scheme. You talk about that auction. I'm really close to buying a car from him. Ken Murray's his name. Check him out on Facebook on Monday nights, if you will. Shameless plug for Ken, because we've both been in plenty of those auctions. He has a Ty Gibbs throwback when Ty ran the throwback in 2022 Xfinity. And I wish Ty would run it in the Cup this year with that new Camry nose. So this is, the fact that it's number 10, for me, is just so much room to grow throughout the rest of the show here. So yeah. What was your number 10?
My number 10 is old school, and it's the one that I had you play in trivia with me last night over.
I actually got it, too.
Yeah. I gave you too many hints, though. But this is going to be an old Wood Brothers paint scheme that Dale Jarrett, I don't have this in the 24 scale, but that's the old Citgo Ford Thunderbird.
Bring it up a little bit farther. There we go. Are you getting back? We're getting kind of blacked out there by your background. Oh, there we go.
Can you see it good now?
Yep.
That is from 91, where he won his first career race driving for the Wood Brothers. I've just always liked that scheme, and I just thought that was an underrated team. And another thing that's really cool about that scheme, that car, without that year, Dale Jarrett, we may have never known who Dale Jarrett was in the long run. That, because the next year is when he got the ride in the 18 car that you brought up, that he won the Daytona 500 in 1993. So that paint scheme and that car and that season meant a lot to his career for a future champion.
I love how you told your wife we were going to bring up something from 30 years ago, and we quite literally did in the first 5 minutes of the podcast. But anyway.
She gets frustrated with how easy I remember NASCAR stats and can't remember what time we're supposed to meet up to go eat with our parents or something.
Hey, you know what they say? Selective learning is a real thing. I figured out. It's a selective hearing, selective learning is a real thing. Number 9 for me. So a lot of these paint schemes probably had multiple versions, or there's something small that I really liked about one or a couple of them. This one is going to be the Rusty Wallace black car, the black Miller Lite car. But if you notice here on the quarter panel, it's the splash. So he really ran this I think he ran over a 3-year period in the mid-'90s. It was a new Miller Lite thing that they had going on at the time is the reason that he ran this. And man, I mean, I absolutely love this car. One of my dad's best racing friends, I should say, is a big Rusty Wallace fan. My dad actually has a Miller High Life T-shirt he wore at Bristol a couple years ago, and I think my dad's friend wanted to kill him over it. He wanted it so bad. So, man, this car is obviously a lot of great memories. Rusty won a lot of races in it. When I say great memories, I mean for those out there, because they ran this before I was ever born. But I will have some personal memories in some of these. This is a picture I actually took. I had a hot pass at the 2017 Southern 500 when BK actually did a throwback. Obviously, it wasn't the splash, but it was to the black Miller Lite car, and it's pretty neat to be down there and be that close to a throwback scheme like that. So that's number 9 for me.
You was there in 2018?
That would have been 2017. Yeah.
In 18, he ran the old one that had the gold trim around the bottom.
Oh, that was beautiful, too. Yeah.
And I saw it win in person, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I think Denny won in 2017. Me and my dad actually left early because it was such a bad race. I think that was, I forget. I don't want to say it was 550. I can't really remember, but you couldn't pass. Mm-hmm. And Denny won the first 2 stages. Him and MTJ were battling it out, and you knew one of them were going to win. And my dad's like, you just want to beat traffic. That's one of the only times my dad has ever asked me to beat traffic in as many years we've been going to races. So, yeah, but Denny did win. We listened to it on the radio on the way home. So,
my number 9 is going to be a Bobby Labonte paint scheme. And this is one that Brett actually had on his list when we was talking about it to start with. This is the Coke paint scheme where they had the Coca-Cola polar bear on it. Ran this car in 2001, and his teammate, Tony Stewart, also ran that Home Depot version of this car. And I've just always loved this car since I was a little kid for some reason. And I guess when I was a little kid, I loved the Coca-Cola commercials when you used to see that polar bear in them all the time. So it's just one of them paint schemes, even though Bobby was never one of my favorites for sure, but I just always loved that car. He only ran it one time to my knowledge, and then I think it was the July race in Daytona. They always ran a special Coca-Cola scheme during that race, trying to
yeah, because Coca-Cola and Pepsi, man, that race was the Cola Wars. Forget who the creator was, but there is a Cola War video done on YouTube about it. I encourage any NASCAR fan to go watch that if you're history buffs like ourselves. But yeah, I have a picture of me with the polar bear at the World of Coke, and I was like, nah, I got to fish that picture out because I'm with you. I love that Coca-Cola bear, man.
Yeah, no doubt. And Tony's version of the Home Depot version wasn't bad either. I mean, it looked really cool. But it's just something about this green and red just goes together. Yeah, it almost makes you think of the Coca-Cola Christmas commercials with that color scheme, snow and.
I love it, man. And the Pontiac. I'm not a GM guy, right? But the Pontiac knows what that thing did.
And I miss the Pontiacs.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you, if the 32 was a Chevrolet, I think Kurt Busch would have won that race in Darlington in 03.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because they had still started with more uniformity at that point, but that Pontiac just had the nose. I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah. Man, I love that car. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and move on to my number 8. This car is actually a car that I got to see for the first time just a couple weeks ago in person. I did wear some orange and some Bass Pro. That should be a hint to some future cars. My shirt that I have on, I'll just let you see the tide. I kind of all tried to keep it in with some of the cars that I'll show. But yeah, man, this Wheaties car, I think for me, I like orange, but only in a little bit in doses. And yes, I know the whole car was orange, but the Wheaties popping off the hood, what it meant for the sport right to this point, because NASCAR had just been a good old hillbilly sport. I mean, that's what it was up until the mid-'90s. And to have a NASCAR race car driver on the cover of a Wheaties box and to have them partner with him, obviously that being Dale Senior driving a number 3 car, that meant so much for the sport. And I think that for me, some people obviously see it, but I don't think the significance of this car for me was just really neat. And obviously, like I said, I actually got to go and see it at RCR. This was taken just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That's hunched in between that Wheaties car and then the 96 Olympic scheme. Obviously, everybody knows how much I love the city of Atlanta, so I had to get my picture of both of those cars. And then, obviously, I know you've been. This is the coolest thing. Well, hey, if you haven't got the chance to go to RCR Museum, I don't care if you didn't like RCR, you got to go. I think it's $10 to get in. Me and my dad went when I was traveling around doing the pro volleyball stuff a couple weeks ago. So, but this was the coolest thing. This is right next to the car in there, and it's the Wheaties box, like full frame Wheaties box with his face on it. I mean, I know you've been like that was so cool to see.
Oh, it's really cool. It's crazy to see that stuff. I was able to go. It's been 2 years ago now. I was up there and went in there, and just the history that's inside that building and what some people don't realize, that ain't just a museum. That was the actual shop that they used to run the team out of, and a lot of those cars are sitting in the same spot they were when Dale Senior unfortunately passed away, and especially there where like you see in the picture right there, the Earnhardt cars, every bit of that was race shop. Now, there's a section of it where they added onto it, I believe that's a museum, where they got some of the race wing cars and stuff like that. But right in there is actual shop. You can go through his hauler, walk through one of his car haulers. It's just a really cool place. And like Brett said, it's real cheap. So if you're a NASCAR fan, you can't beat the price to go see the history you'll see in there.
Because you'll probably say, well, if you've been to Charlotte, there's a lot of museums that are free. Like you can go up to Hendrick. I saw a lot of cars in Hendrick. Like they have a Days of Thunder car. They got Larson's championship car. Like you get to see a lot of that stuff. Was neat. And it's free just in the gift shop. The RCR one is one of the very few ones you actually have to pay for. But man, I mean, $10 to see what you get to see. You're not going to see that at just any race shop. And I would strongly encourage anybody who maybe lives in the Charlotte area or is going to the 600 or the Roval, and you're in the area. It's about an hour north of Concord. You just take 85 all the way up through there, and it's about 10 minutes actually from Bowman Gray where that shop is. And they got Cawley is right over there, Big Machine, which is who Parker Klickerman drives for, and they're all right over there in the RCR.
It's all right there.
Yeah,
and just one thing too, it ain't just Dale Earnhardt. If you're Kevin Hart, they got the 2003 Brickyard 400 winning car in there. It's not just the 2007 500 winning car. They got Austin's 18 winning.
They even have now. They got Kyle Busch's car from Auto Club last year in there. Like, I mean, just from last year.
Well, that was the last race at Auto Club. I mean, it is, and his first one with RCR. So, and speaking of RCR, my next
I seen it.
You done seen it?
It's orange, but I'm not going to spoil it anymore. I didn't see it, though.
Well, it is. This is a Busch Series version. For those of you who don't know, the Xfinity Series used to be sponsored by Busch. And there was several different little variations of this car. And he would wind up, and this is a Kevin Harvick car, he would wind up running it in the Cup Series on and off. And I like the version a little better that has the Reese Cup on the hood. But this one right here, if you see it, has a special thing on for anniversary, RCR's 35th anniversary that was running on this. So it's a really cool paint scheme, and he won several races with it, especially in the Busch Series. Because in the mid-2000s, when Kevin, he was based, everybody that came along from 2013 through 17 that complained about Kyle Busch winning all the Xfinity races, Kevin Harvick was doing it from like 03 through 09. And a lot of them came in this car. And it's just always been one of my favorites. And this is another one I got in an auction. And it's just one of them. It's clean. It's simple. And I love how on the numbers, if you can tell, I don't know if you can tell in the video, you can see the Reese's like coming apart, like the speed is blowing it away. And the details in it's just awesome to me. And I always love them cars. And I just like orange paint schemes. Like you said, I love any orange paint scheme. It just stands out. I love the Tony Stewart. It's not on my list, but just the plain orange Home Depot that he went to, like when he won his championship at 05. I love orange for some reason.
Yeah, I like Joey's paint scheme, which is not on mine, but I do have a Joey paint scheme on here, but it's not that one. His 2012 Home Depot paint scheme, solid orange car. I think for me, I don't like burnt orange. I don't like Texas. Sorry to any Texas fans out there.
I don't like Tennessee. That goes for Tennessee too. From
That's right. I love just this like kind of like the hat I have on, or the Reese's car, or the Wheaties car. Yeah, I'm with you there. That was one that was going to make my list, but for the sake of the podcast, we were like, we at least have all these paint schemes. We got to have 10 different paint schemes.
What's bad is we could have made this podcast 10 hours long because I could have man, I watched a lot of racing from the 70s and 80s. There's a bunch of paint schemes from back
Oh
then I
yeah.
like, but it is what it is. So, what are we on
I'll
now? We're
move.
going to number 7.
We're going to yep, number 7 here for me. Speaking of Joe, it is the 2022 throwback paint scheme he ran at Darlington, in which he won in. Obviously, you see him doing the burnout in. The Smokin' Joe paint scheme, which was a throwback to himself when he ran. I think it was in his midgets days when he was running quarter midgets, if I'm not mistaken. So, throwback to himself. I'm a big chrome guy. I love when NASCAR has now started letting them bring the chrome numbers back. You got the gold chrome number in it. I also love red. And yeah, I know that it's in the Shell Penn's old scheme anyway, but that red, it's like that matte red. Oh man, it's such a beautiful paint scheme. And then what it signified. I watched that 24 car win an awful lot in my childhood, Jonathan Booth. And to see that car, that specific paint scheme that Byron was running, get moved out of the way after it had moved my favorite driver, and then to see that car go to victory lane, it was also one of the last races I got to watch with my dad before, because this was right after I graduated college. So many great memories. It was right after I graduated college, the only week I had at home before I was moving to Wisconsin and take my first job after college. And me and my dad got to watch this race together. So a lot of great memories from this car. And then obviously him celebrating on it. And then one last picture. This wasn't that year. Obviously, I'm a lot younger in this picture. This was 2014. So the first time I got to meet Joey, it was at Darlington. So I was like, I'll include this in there. So that's little Brett. For reference, Joey's about 6 foot. I'm about 6'3" now, so I would tower over Joey now. But that's young 12-year-old Brett getting to meet Joey. So,
And I dislike to finish that race for the exact opposite reasons of the reason you liked it.
And I do have talking about diecast. Since we're on Joey, this is only one of 2 diecast. I actually 124s I own. I got 2 164s I have in here, but. That is bought that at the 600 last year. That is my champion diecast. It sits up here along with I said this on the podcast last week. We were talking about I'm pulling for all these different drivers. No, I have no other choice. I have to pull for Joey every week. Look at this every time I watch television. So these are 2 of the only things I'll show that's not on my TV. But yeah, Joey at Darlington is number 7 for me.
Well, my number 7 is going to be a Richard Petty scheme, but it's not going to be the one that everybody thinks of when it comes to Richard. The STP car is obviously iconic, but to me, the Petty blue is just as iconic. Can you see that good, Brett?
There we go. Hold up. There we go. You're going in and out of focus. I did get to see it, though. But there we go. Yeah, hold it a little bit closer.
There you go. And this is the 1970 Dodge that had the big wings on the back of it, if you can't tell. But just in general, that Petty blue car, he won 100 races in that car, won several of his championships in that car. And it's just an iconic paint scheme. And I love the story. I just love the story behind how they created that. The Pettys wasn't some rich family back then. I mean, they were literally it ain't like it is now. Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, these guys, I mean, they're busy throughout the week. But these guys would race on Sunday, sometimes drive the race car back. It wouldn't be hauled on a trailer, and then work all week to get it back the next week because it was their paycheck. If they didn't do it, they didn't eat. And they didn't have the money to go buy no paint. And they just mixed some white and a random blue together, and that came out. And it's just an amazing story. And then it stuck, and they kept it forever. And then people don't realize the story when STP did come knocking on Richard's door, which was the first big-time sponsor in the sport, a huge deal. Richard turned them down to start with because they said the car's going to be solid red. And Richard said, see ya. There's going to be blue on that car. We ain't doing it. And that all stemmed from this paint scheme, and I love it. It's an historic paint scheme.
That color is officially Petty blue in like a lot of different like publications. And you speak of those stories. This is what I've been reading this book for quite some time now. It's Kyle Petty's autobiography that he wrote, and a lot of the stories you tell is in there. So yeah, that's a legendary one. I love the wing, man. I think that's an all-time look with that wing on the back.
And also, I don't know if y'all was able to notice, I am lucky that one is signed by King Richard himself. So I don't know if you can see it on the packaging. It seems like whatever on that screen, if it's in the packaging, it messes it up. Can you see that?
I was able to see it. Now, did you meet him to see that, or you bought it?
No, unfortunately, no. But I do have certificate of authenticity that it is. He is.
Gotcha.
And that is a rare scale, too. That's a 143. You don't see many.
I wonder why they did it that way. I wonder
Yeah.
what the significance of 143 is. You know something else about that car? I'm sure you know this. In the movie Cars, that is actually what is the Richards character in that movie, whatever his character's name is. That's what that car is based
I think
off
it's
of.
Mr. the King is what.
Yeah, that's the one it's based
Yeah,
off
that's
of
the
right
exact
there.
car it is. It's got the wing on it and got the slanted nose as well. Man, that's crazy watching cars back in the days. How high off the track the front ends were compared
Just
to nowadays.
bouncing.
Yeah.
And then they were racing in T-shirts and smoking cigarettes mid-race.
Even in the early 2000s, man, I used to remember. You go back and watch the old Martinsville race when they go in, the front end be up like this, and they get in the corner, bam. I mean, it looks like it slams down 6 feet from in 03, 04 in them range, but you don't see that no more. The way the ride height rules so far, but
Yeah, and you hear them talk about the springs and stuff too, and I mean we could go for days about that. So yeah, but yeah, that's number 7. I guess time to move on to the number 6. Number 6 for me, another one I got to see a few weeks ago at RCR. I'm a huge gold guy. You can see if you're watching us, see my glasses are gold, but I wear a gold chain. I love this car so much, and obviously the Bass Pro Shop hat was kind of why I wore it today. It's the number 3 car. Dale actually ran this in the All-Star race. I think it was a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. I know 98. I think he also ran it in 96, if I'm not mistaken. I read that when I went to the RCR Museum a couple weeks ago. So, but I know for certain he ran this car in 98 on the paint scheme.
He ran it in Atlanta, too, didn't they, in a race that Bass Pro sponsored? If I'm not mistaken.
So, yeah, it was originally just an all-star paint scheme, and then he ran it a couple different times in some points paint races as well. Dale Jr. is now his late model. He has a late model Bass Pro car that is basically just a spit version of this. And then here it is, picture I taken just like the Wheaties photo. This is in a different section, or same section I should say, but in a section where they just have the cars in there, and it's a bunch of Dale Senior cars. This is the Bass Pro one, hunched in between a Wrangler's throwback that he ran of his own, and then the AC Delco car on the other side of it. So, yeah, I mean, Bass Pro, man, I mean, the relationship they've had with NASCAR started with Dale Sr., and a lot of that was told on the Dale Jr. download a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, Bass Pro Shop and NASCAR go hand in hand. I could not have a list and have my favorite Bass Pro paint scheme on there, so.
Yep, that paint, and going back to the mid '90s, Dale Earnhardt. Well, let me back up just a little bit. For the fans that was watching from the very late '90s through probably let's say 2010, before we started having cars that had 8 sponsors a year, the All-Star race was the one weekend where everybody would bring out a special paint scheme, and Dale Earnhardt started that with the silver car, then the Bass Pro car that you was just talking about. Dale Earnhardt and RCR was one that started that. It was a tradition. It was one of the favorite things when I was a kid about the All-Star race, was getting to see these special paint schemes. Unfortunately, we don't get it no more because, heck, right now, if you don't pay attention like we do every week, you could watch a race this week. 3 weeks from now, you won't be able to find the driver you was pulling for. Spotters deserve a race. I hope Spotters got a raise from what they did 10 years ago because they got to worry about learning a new car every week.
Well, especially, I mean, if you're Tyler Reddick spotter and Ty Gibbs spotter, I mean, now you got guys running similar paint schemes every week. And the one thing I thought was cool, and my dad actually didn't know this, or I think he knew this, but got reminded of it. When Dale Sr. used to run restrictor plate tracks, they would have that orange line and that orange number to be able to pick that car out from in the pack. So just something really, really neat about those cars, man, and I'm with you. Really the last but special scheme I remember that I thought was neat in All-Star race was when Carl Edwards, I think it was 2011, he ran that silver Affleck car. And then he ran an orange and black Affleck car, which orange was not in Affleck colors. He ran that orange and black car and actually won the All-Star race in 2012. And I still think it's neat that they do the American thing. Hendrick's real big on that, the American throwback during the 600 every year. Not a throwback, but a special scheme. I'm so used to saying throwback now because it's the only time we get special schemes, it seems like, that are outside of just changing sponsor to sponsor.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I mean, yeah, Darlington is the week that we get to see them cool schemes now. Speaking of Darlington, Hendrick did Junior Nation wrong last week, man. speaking of throwback paint schemes, when they gave the little clip of a driver with the skeleton gloves tying up the shoes, and the next day they announced it's just a throwback paint scheme. Man, Junior, half this country was crushed. They were praying all night it was a race announcement.
Yeah, I don't think Junior was going to come back. I mean, we're only
I
going
don't
to see
think
him
he
come
is
back.
either, but there was a lot of hopefuls.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see him come back and race for himself, obviously, and he's going to do that for a couple more years. But yeah, I don't think Miss Amy would let him come back and race in a Cup race anymore.
I don't think so either, but I don't know if you saw the comments, man. There was a lot of people praying it was fixing to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely one of. Honestly, that's one of my favorite Earnhardt schemes of all time is that Bass Pro car. But I guess moving on, this is not an Earnhardt car; it's an Earnhardt number, and this is not going to be a paint scheme that Brett thinks that I'm going to throw up here. I promise you that.
Okay.
It is a first win car from Martin Truex Jr. in the Xfinity Series, then Busch Series, Taco Bell. I just remember watching this car race in 04. This was 04 at Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
I just love simple cars for whatever reason. It's just I like that purple. It pops, and it's just got the Taco Bell logos on it. And I don't know. I've always loved simple paint schemes, and this is just one of them. And I don't know why. Back then, I pulled for Truex in the Busch Series. I guess I thought it was cool that Dale Jr. was trying to help other drivers get to the top. And this was not Junior Motorsports, by the way. For those of you who don't know, this is a Chance 2 car.
Yep.
A lot of people aren't aware of that Chance 2. And what it was, Dale Jr. actually co-owned that team with Teresa. A lot of people don't know that. And this is where Martin got his start. And it's just been a paint scheme I've always loved. And I love that font too on the 8 from them DEI Chance 2 days. It just looks good to me. It's a clean car. It's just been one I've always liked. I don't know why.
I didn't know you had that car. I did know the car. I'm not surprised that you put it in. What are we at? Number 6 right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that you put it in your top 10 at all. Didn't know you owned the diecast. That is a deep pull, which we have a few of those on our list, but that's a deep pull.
Oh, my honorable mention is deep. Nobody's going to see that one coming.
Just wait. Anyway, I love that pick. We'll move on to our top 5. I think it's because originally we were just going to do 5, and now we're making you guys listen for an hour. So
well, in all honesty, we went from 5, and then if we thought it would have been realistic, we wanted to go to 20, but we settled with 10.
Yeah. We're going to talk, 35 minutes about each car. So we knew 10 was the meta there. So moving into my top 5, it's actually the shirt that I have on. It won the Brickyard. It is the number 10 Ricky Rudd Ford Tide car. The reason I think this car is so cool, I actually sent a list of cars. I had them in order to my dad and my good friend, my best friend Ant. It's us 3 going to the 600 in May. And I said, here's a list I have, guys. What do you guys think in preparation for the podcast? And I was already mulling on this. I've had this shirt for years and years now. And my dad said, you don't have a Tide car in there. And I said, I don't. So I had to put this one in there. The Ricky Craven Tide car obviously was good. When Ricky drove for Rick Hendrick and drove that 5 Tide car, it's pretty much the same paint scheme. But for me, this has 2 different distinctions. It's a Ford. And Ricky was driving for himself. I mean, that was anyone in the Brickyard in this car. So, love this paint scheme, man. And, yeah, I mean, what is there not to love about the Tide cars? DW winning the 589 in that Tide car. I mean, even a couple years ago, to go to Bristol Dirt, and, Eric Jones ran that Tide car a couple times. It was just anytime Tide is in sport. When Eric drove the 20, and he ran the Tide. And Matt Kensington, we could go down the list of Tide cars. They're all beautiful. This is just the one that I chose because of the significance that this car had.
And one of them, we brought it up earlier, I did with that Pontiac nose, is one of the closest finish in NASCAR history, and that was a pretty car, too, on that Pontiac scheme with Ricky Craven in the 32. Yeah, I love that old school paint scheme of the Tide. And like you said, it's pretty much the same scheme from the 5 to 10. Now, I disagree with you. I think it looks better on a Chevrolet, but that's just one thing we are never going to agree on. But that's definitely that one was one of the ones that I would have put on my list. And if you're a big, I actually may can send you a gift in the mail off that car. I got a Tide hat signed by him.
Really? I was given the only Tide hat that I have, and I wouldn't break my manufacturer thing when I was 17. I was gifted a Matt Kenseth, but it could have been an Eric Jones too. At that time, it's a Tide number 20 hat. It's just solid orange with Tide on the front. And I actually wore it a couple times just because of how much I love the Tide paint schemes. But yeah, I love that car. All right, what do you got? Start your top five.
Well, my top five is this one. I'm not going to take out the box, but it is the 5 car, the Valvoline Larson. This is by far my favorite scheme of Larson's, and this is the next gen version from 22. And it's pretty much the same scheme that he was able to win with at 2000 and 2021. Real close to it. You disagreeing?
I know I got PTSD from that Bristol night race.
Oh,
I was, yeah. I just, every time I see that scheme, that's what I think about.
Oh, I thought you was disagreeing with me.
No, I agree. It is very, very much.
I'm glad you brought that up. He won twice with this car in 2021 because he won the inaugural Nashville race in the Valvoline car. That's when they first debuted it. And this year they've changed it up some, but I like this version better. It just has that old school look to it to me. And it's one of, by far, my favorite Larson paint scheme going back his whole career. And it's honestly the only one on my list to shock you.
Well, we both had our favorite driver on there once. So
yeah,
I think that was, it's the best scheme he's ever ran. I would agree. The only one that would rival that, and it was a throwback to Kyle Petty, was that Mellow Yellow scheme. Yeah, that's the only other scheme that would rival that. But I'm with you. It is a beautiful scheme. It just takes me back to 21 Bristol when and Kyle did nothing wrong. It was his teammate.
No, he didn't.
So that's the PTSD.
Me and Kyle both celebrated that night.
Yeah, I did not. It was a long walk. It was a long walk back to the truck at Bristol, and in which we actually lost the truck for about 30 minutes. I got heckled by Chase Elliott fans because I had on Kevin Harvick stuff that night, to the surprise of anyone. So that's our number fives. Number 4, which is one that you wouldn't have thought I would have had if I wouldn't have told you. It is the Michael Waltrip 101 Dalmatians car. Yes, this was a car promo for the movie. Michael only won once in a 21 car, wasn't even in a points-paying races when the All-Star race. And so, obviously, you don't pick this car because of the success that it had. If Michael was in it, I don't mean offense to that. It's just a matter of fact. But this car, for me, has so much significance. A, because I looked at it my whole life. We have both the 124 in my household, and we have that's an aerial picture, and you can see all the other diecast I have at home. I didn't bring them up here with me to North Dakota. And we also have the 164 version of it, never taking this out of the pack, which my dad gave me full liberty to as a child, which I did to a lot of them, and I probably lost a lot of value on diecast. My poor father just loved his only son. But this car right here, I think I love the packaging so much, even as a child, that I wouldn't take it out of it. And I'm so glad that we did. I'm actually so glad I took these pictures. This picture from about 3 years ago of a bunch of diecasts we had. But yeah, this was honestly almost been my top 3. But the cars in my top 3 just have a little bit more significance to me. Probably because this is just a sick paint scheme and not any on-track significance. But yeah, man, I love this. Love this car. And shout out my dad, because without my dad, I don't even think I would have known this paint scheme would have existed. So that's my number 4.
All right. And I am going to – I never thought I'd have this scheme this low, but it is. And it's – everybody knows that my current driver is Kyle Larson. My all-time driver is 4-time champion, 93-time Cup Series winner. I can go on and on and on and on. Jeff Gordon. And by the way, Winston Cup, 7-time champion, just so you know.
That's right.
Jimmy has 3.
That's right.
Just so you
Kevin
know.
Harvick would have 4!
Yeah, he would have, including 2020. But this is one of the variations of the Flames car. Now, this is a COT version, which is one of the ugliest race cars in NASCAR history. And to be honest with you, the only reason I have this diecast, I don't know, can you see the confetti on it, Brett?
Yep. Turn it back around, and the back windshield, you can really see it on it. Yep.
This is the race win from Phoenix in 2007 when he tied Earnhardt on the wins list. That's the only reason I have a COT car. The only reason, because it is ugly. That wing is atrocious. I'm sorry, that splitter. It's a pretty paint scheme. I mean, as pretty as it can be with that body. But I just pulled this one out. A lot of my Gordon stuff, because I collected it when I was younger, I have probably 120 die casts in this house. There's probably another 300 at my parents' house from the time I was a kid. And most of my Gordon stuff's there. But this is an unbelievable paint scheme that he ran from '01 through '08, won a championship in it, won his his third and final Daytona 500 in that scheme, won 2 Brickyard 400s in that scheme. So it's definitely the second most successful paint scheme of his career. But
What about the most successful? Is that on this list?
you know it. You should know that.
I thought that's the one I thought that's the one you were gonna show me, and I was like, there's no way. I wouldn't even have that at number 4. I mean, I would take that over some more, but
This one at number 4? You wouldn't have this one at 4?
no, that one would be at 4. And I'm with you. The CO2 version, it doesn't ruin that. It's CO2, the COT version of that car. It's not carbon dioxide gas. The '01, when they first did that car in '01, he won his final championship in that. To me, that's the best version of that paint scheme.
Well, if you look at the Gen 4 version, because technically the COT was Gen 5.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Gen 4 version from '07, they added the little blue flame on the fender right there. Now, on the Gen 4 version, it looks really cool. On this, you can't, between the splitter bars and the way that fit, you can't tell much about it. And it just didn't look good. And one thing I hate about the COT, man, you wipe that Impala off right there and make this just a white car, and you hand me another white car that's supposed to be a Tony Stewart car from 2008. One's a Toyota, one's a Chevy, and you can't tell the difference.
Nope.
I mean, it was absolutely one of the worst decisions NASCAR ever made in designing. The only good thing about that car was the safety change they made.
Yeah. That saved Michael McDowell's life, that car did.
Yeah.
I looked at that car an awful lot because the most played video game, it probably now is NASCAR Heat 5, but for a while it was NASCAR '09. So I've looked at that car an awful lot in a lot of loading screens and looked at Jeff Gordon an awful lot because he talked to me every single day that I would load into that game. So that's a good scheme.
And then on Heat 5, he tells you you're clear when you're not.
Yeah, he does. He does. Jeff Gordon has probably killed me about 17 times on NASCAR.
He needed to stay behind the wheel. He didn't need to get in the spotter stand.
No, he did not. He did not. All right, top 3. This is where it gets good. I know for me, my top 3, 2 and 3 has a lot of sentimental value to me. So let's go ahead and get into it. Man, I mean, where do we begin? You see, I got the book right here. I got to start reading here. I just bought it a couple weeks ago when I was in Talladega. It's Davey, and it's this paint scheme, right? A lot of people are big on the one that he won Rookie of the Year in. Is that white and black with the gold number? It is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. They actually had these pit shirts, which I have hanging up here on my wall. I bought that for 2 different reasons. One, because of how much I love Davey, and 2, I love Laird Mack, and obviously he was his crew chief. So, but yeah, this paint scheme, man, I mean, geez. The black and the red, we know I love Georgia, the Bulldogs, right? But then how the yellow pops off of this car, man, oh my goodness. Nothing does it justice. There's not too many black paint schemes that have ever looked this good in the history of the sport. And then speaking of cars that I got to see, this was also a picture that was taken just a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you can see the mural here or not, the painting that they have in front of the car. This was at the International Motorsports Museum in Talladega, which I know you've been to more times than you could count. And got to see that car in there. Obviously what it meant. Davey won a lot of races in that car, and where most success came in his short, obviously, NASCAR career, and the majority of his 19 races won came in this car. So, yeah, it had to be in my top 3, and not only because it's Davey, but because this paint scheme was sick.
Well, not only, but it ain't just a Davey paint scheme. They carried that scheme through the 90s with Ernie Irvan. That is one of the most iconic paint schemes in NASCAR history, in my mind, without a doubt. And me being from Alabama, his story means a lot to me. I do a lot of research on the Allisons, love the Allisons. the Alabama gang in general. Red Farmer, he had a stroke back around Christmas, so he's not driving for the first time in his life. He's 92, 93 years old. But last week he was rebuilding the carburetor for a 20-year-old to drive his race car Saturday night at the Talladega Short Track. He may not be in it, but he's still working on race cars. That whole group, and they're basically like family. And for those that don't know, Red Farmer was in the helicopter with Davey when he passed, unfortunately. So, and he didn't get a scratch. It's just amazing how things like that happen. But definitely one of the most iconic paint schemes. And if he wouldn't have put it on his list, if I'd have sent my list before he could send his, mine would have had that car on it.
Dude, I think it does look better on those late '90s T-Birds and Tauruses, but that block style car, man, those early '90s T-Birds, you still can't hardly beat it. And the fact that Davey was driving it. So, and like you said, one more thing, even just furthermore in this paint scheme beyond Davey, this is the car and the scheme that Ernie Irvin, not Kenny Irvin. Ernie Irvin was able to come back in at Michigan and win in the track that almost killed him in this paint scheme. So a lot of significance beyond even Davey in this paint scheme as well.
And no doubt, for sure. And guys, I have made a mistake on my third one. I did not grab the diecast.
Uh-oh.
So I'm just going to have to explain it. Maybe you can pull it up on your phone or something, show it to them on the TV. But it is the 2004 Daytona 500 winner for Dale Jr. There's a special Budweiser scheme. That was the second 500 that I ever watched from green flag to checker flag. And in the moment, that scheme didn't mean much to me. But it's really the moment because that was 6 years to the day that Dale Sr. had finally won his 500 in his 20th attempt. And it just seemed the pressure that he was under in those days, or really his whole career, he was under an immense amount of pressure because everybody would say it's up to him to make the sport survive. And that was clearly a huge day for him. And that's it right there. And I have that die cast twice, basically. I have the one with the date for the 500 on it, race win version. I have the dual race what you won, race win version. The only difference is the date on the hood has 2 different days on it. And
you know what's funny? I also have this at home. I don't know where it's at, but this is the first ever alcohol car I got because all the other cars my mom and dad would buy me when I was little, it would say, for example, Dale Jr. on it or Rusty on it, like the video games, right? And this was the first ever one. It was sick because, like you said, the significance of winning this race, but it also actually had Budweiser on it. And I'm with you on this one. Same thing you just said about Davey. I'll reciprocate that. If you wouldn't have had this one on your list, it would have been on my list.
And you bring up the alcohol rule. That's funny to me. I remember going to Talladega in 2014. It was just me and my brother. He was a huge Keselowski fan. He was 20 years old and he couldn't buy no souvenirs.
Really?
At the track. They would not sell him anything at the track because he wasn't 21. Because they didn't want to be trying to advertise alcohol to people under the age of 21.
That's insane.
And you know what happened with that, though, right? He came over here, handed me his debit card, and I walked up there and bought it after I left the Gordon hauler. And then he wrecked half the field that day. That was the day of me starting not to dislike Brad. He messed up. He went 6 laps down and somehow thought he was going to get all 6 laps back and was up there and wrecked 20 cars trying to pass the leader, including Jeff.
Now, what year was this?
2014.
Oh, yeah, I remember that race. Yeah.
Oh, it made me mad. That was the last time I ever got to see Jeff race in person, and Brad took him out halfway through, along with 19 others.
Well, you'll see that from time to time. Well, that was number.
Thanks for helping me out on that, Brett. I apologize for the diecast on me.
Yeah, talk about, and this final note on this before we move to number 2. You look at diecast prices, and a lot of these prices will shock you. That car is one that will never come down off its value. That car is going to be anywhere from $200 to $300 upwards. You try to find that car. And what I'm meaning is that should tell you significance of that car, that 04 victory. So, all right, number 2. Now again, it can really be 1A, 1B for me. Before I go into mine, I had this one actually at number 1. And I still, throughout this podcast, have debated on keeping it there. But I'm going to keep it at number 2. And again, this is what A1B. There's no distinction, really. There's no line in the sand. This one just has a lot more sentimental value to me, but I also love the paint scheme. Number 1 is just my favorite paint scheme of all time. I really have no sentimental value to it whatsoever. So, without further ado, it is going to be the 01-02 Elliott Sadler Motorcraft car. Man, where do I start with this car? It was the only win that Elliott had when he was with the Wood Brothers. It was 01 Spring Bristol race. It was one of the last races I actually ever ran before I came into existence. It was ran in April of 01. I came into existence in May of 01. So I was already in existence in theory, but it was still in my mama's tummy. And my dad got to watch this race. He had been following Elliott since he was running Xfinity. It's actually the first ever Chevrolet my dad actually ever pulled for when Elliott was driving the Phillips 66 car in the Busch Series. Actually won at Myrtle Beach. It was one of his first 2 wins in the Busch Series. And Elliott won this race on fuel mileage. People say that they had some kind of different tires because his tires never wore down on that last run. I say it was just Elliott Sadler being Elliott Sadler, 3-time winner in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I actually have some more pictures here. This car is significant. So I actually got to see this car up in Stewart, Virginia. Got to go to Wood Brothers. This is a car I made a beeline for when we made it in the garage. My mom and dad go up here about once a year. I've only been up there once with my dad. And I made a beeline for this car. There's me just looking at the door with Elliott's name on it. This is also pretty neat about this. This car, and I know the Wood Brothers haven't won a lot, unfortunately, in the last 25 years, but this is the last car that they won in when they were still full-time in Stewart, Virginia. I think it was 2003 was their first full year in North Carolina. And while they were still running out of their old original race shop, which is the museum in the gift shop today. And so this banner was pretty neat to take a picture of because it was their last race win when they were still full-time out of Stewart, Virginia. And then here's I cherish this picture quite a lot. If you can't see it, it's me and my dad with the Wood Brothers. This is back in 2017 at Darlington as well. So, man, so much significance that this has. From the Wood Brothers being my dad's all-time favorite racing team to Elliott Sadler was the first racing gear I ever received when he was in Eminem's car, and just all the other stuff that I've just noted. I would have had it at number 1, but there's just one scheme I just like a little bit better. So
that has always been a fun scheme. I used to play it on the old NASCAR video games. It was clean. It's a twist on they're basically like you see the scheme that Harrison runs now. That's basically in general the same scheme they've run forever. And for just 2 or 3 years there, they went to a little something different. And I don't know if that's why I like it so much because they wound up going to something a little bit different that also looked really good. Because a lot of teams that go from iconic paint schemes to a new one, a lot of times it don't work. The new scheme they go through. And they just somehow went to a good one and just almost makes it special. And then you add in a driver won his first race in it. And that was the last win they had for 10 years until Trevor won the 500. It wasn't only the last win, like you said, when they were running full-time out of Virginia, but it was the last win period for 10 years. So that paint scheme means a lot to the Wood Brothers. And if you're a fan of the Wood Brothers, I mean, I'm not – but you've got, 3 wins?
Yeah, I mean, you got – Trevor won the 511 and – Blaney won. No, I had 2 wins since then. Yeah, Blaney won at Pocono. What was that, 17 when he did that? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We harp on it every week. I know the equipment's not that bad. I know it's the guy that got behind the wheel, unfortunately. And I wore my Harrison Burton shirt Monday night to go play pickup basketball. And so, no, I don't dislike Harrison Burton. I actually really like him. I met him a couple years ago. He's a great guy. It's just I know that equipment's not that bad, and it hurts to watch. And so even though I like somebody, I'm going to be objective about it. And he actually got engaged today, so congratulations to him on that.
I didn't even say that.
But I don't know. I honestly, my hope is that he would pick it up and he'd be the guy to stay in the car. But I just don't see that happening. And like you said, man, that car is too iconic, and the equipment, quite frankly, is too good to not win. And that's probably why I really hold on to this game as much as I do. So, you're number 2.
My number two, and for a Gordon fan, people, when I was a teen, I could not stand Junior. But looking back on it, and it wasn't even he did nothing wrong. It was just like you grow up. Gordon fans can't like Junior fans. I was a little kid, like, okay, I'm gonna hate him. I mean, like all these adults say, if you're a Gordon fan, you gotta hate him, and we're gonna hate you for liking Gordon. I'm like, okay, well, I hate Junior then for no reason. And the longer we went into the career and got older and learned this, and looked down the pressure he was under, and then you look at iconic moments. We looked at the 500 paint scheme a while ago. There's only one. Dale Jr. has one paint scheme that's more iconic than anything other. That July night in 2001 when they went back to Daytona after his father passed and he was able to win the race. This is by far one of my favorite paint schemes of all time. Obviously, why it's at number two. Just the pressure at that point, 26, 27-year-old man was under. Can you imagine what it was like for him to go through turn 3 and 4 for the first time that weekend? I mean, just the pressure he was under. And then you watch the broadcast with Alan Bestwick calling that race was unbelievable. Why in the world he is not working in TV? I hope Amazon picks him up, by the way. Amazon needs, if they don't go after Brett. They can go after Brett. But if they don't get Brett, they need to bring Alan Bestwick back. But that is just an unbelievable car. And that was a special paint scheme. It's for the MLB All-Star game that Budweiser was partnering with to create this paint scheme. And in the way, and you add into it too, not only everything that's going on, it wasn't as far back, but how similar it was to Dale Sr.'s final win. Mm-hmm. Junior dominates that race, and they have some different pit strategy. He goes back to, I think, at least seventh. He's only 6 cars compared to what, but still, there was only a few laps to go, and he just drove right through them like Earnhardt did at Talladega in the fall of 2000. And this car also started just that incredible streak at Daytona and Talladega that Dale Jr. had in the early to mid 2000s. And I just don't think there's not many paint schemes, especially a one race scheme. Because obviously this is a special scheme. It was only ran once for that All-Star game. There's not many just one race schemes that people remember long term like this.
It's funny that we both have schemes that were ran in 01, but it's also funny that you have Dale Jr., I have Elliott Sadler as wife. You bring up that turns 3 and 4. That race at Daytona that year, their off week was the week before that race. Dale Jr. actually told the story on the download. I forget how long it's been now, but it was on one of the
last year.
Yeah, I watch all of them, listen to all of them. So him and Elliott were really good friends, obviously, very good friends. They were going down to Daytona to spend the week and basically party the week before because it was their off week. And they get down there and they go into the track. And Elliott's like, what are we? And then Elliott's like, oh, and kind of like realized. And Dale just went and they drove a pickup truck on the apron to turn 3 and 4. Dale got out at that spot because he said he didn't want his first time back at that spot to be in a race car. And turns out, I mean, what ended up transpiring during that race, dude, unreal. And just that whole one season, from what happened at Daytona in the first race, obviously, one of the most tragic moment in the history of sport. Then what happens at the second Daytona race? And then for Dale Jr., 9/11 obviously happened in September of that year. And then Dale Jr. won the first race back after 9/11 at Dover, doesn't do a burnout, just gets the American flag, puts it in the car, rides around the track. He was a part of a lot of unfortunate, but also, I don't want to say the word fortunate, but a lot of big momentous events that helped carry the sport that year. And a lot of pressure, like you said, on just a young man's shoulder.
Yeah, no doubt. It was incredible he was able to go through that. And, just a quick thing, this has always been an opinion of mine. If you go back and look at the early part of his career, even his rookie year, he won 2 races plus the All-Star. I mean, you can't complain about a rookie doing that in the Cup Series. And through 04 and 05, well, really through 06, everything was going pretty good. He had a couple of up and down years. But he went downhill when he went to Hendrick. I just think that just the fact that his daddy's name was attached to that team, it kept him going. It's like he lost his daddy for good when that team went away to me. And he just wasn't the same. And if you go back and look at it, when he got with Steve Letarte, was about the same time he got with his wife, if you follow his career. And his career turned back around into the concussion. He won 4 races in 14, won 3 in 15, was that close to going to the Final Four if Kevin Hart don't wreck the field at Talladega for your boy to win 3 straight.
Yep.
to go into the Final Four and was leading the points the next year when he got hurt. So Dale Jr.'s career is also what could have been to me, because he was a lot more talented than I. I'm not saying he would have been down as one of the top 5 greatest, but he was a better driver than what he's shown, and I think it was all mental from
Yeah,
everything.
a lot of people say if his dad survives and maybe perhaps, I'm not going to say, I'm not God. I can't say if he doesn't die in that crash at Daytona how much longer he races, and B, how much longer he survives after that. But if he say he retires organically in '04 and he's still with us running that race team, Teresa doesn't have the power that she assumed after Dale Sr. passed, and obviously he's still here supporting his son. And there's a lot of hypothesis out there, and I seem to fall under this train of thought that Dale Jr. would have been a Cup champion, and I truly believe that. There's no way to know that for certain one way or the other, but I do seem to fall under that train of thought because, like you said, the speed that he showed, and again, we know he was in top-tier equipment, but still, to be a rookie and to win 2 races, we all know I love Ty Gibbs. I think he's one of the most talented drivers we've ever seen, as young as he is. But even he didn't win races as a rookie. And I just think that goes to show, obviously, how good Dale Jr. was, how young he was, and I'm with you. I love that number 2 pick. So,
also, Gordon didn't win as a rookie.
No.
He did something Gordon didn't do, and it's incredible. And that just shows, you brought that up. That team was still extremely young. Now, obviously, Earnhardt had a lot of good connections and stuff. Number one, that was the first year for the 18. Before that, there was just a single car team with Steve Park, and they kept dealing with injuries, unfortunately, for Steve. But that team was in the early years, too, and Earnhardt already had it at that level. There's no telling what that team would have done with other drivers, too, not just Junior.
He comes over there, and Michael Waltrip wins in the car, and Mikey couldn't win in anything for the first almost 2 decades of his career. So,
exactly.
Well, honorable mention time. So I got 2 I need to grab over here that I do actually have, and then we'll get to some pictures here. So let me grab these off my mantle. So this was obviously not a race ran car. It is a gold version of a race ran car. I got this at Charlotte last year. It is an Adam Petty car. The Spree car, man, so beautiful. Again, I think they only made a certain amount of these, and I was just able to find it. The only reason I'm showing this next one is because I know it's not number 1, because I know what your number 1 is. I wouldn't show it if I had any suspicion that it was your number 1. It's a 164, so I don't know where you're going to see it. But speaking of Dale Sr. and Dale Jr., it is Kevin Harvick's race win from Atlanta in 2001. So those are actually 2 that I actually possess.
That was so close to being on my list. And it would be honorable mention too. But I just didn't want to drag out 30 more die-casts.
Right. These are just happen to be right over here on my mantle. The only other die-cast I haven't shown, I have Chris Buescher's little 164 that he won in at Michigan last year. That Castrol Edge car. That's the only other. All these cars that I have, if I have a die-cast, unlike Jonathan, I'm not throwing shade, if I actually possess it here in my apartment, the car actually means something to me. I have over probably 300, 400, 500, die-cast back home that I didn't bring up here, but the ones that I brought, obviously like to sit and look at from time to time. All right, one's on TV. Picture of me with Alan Kowicki's 92 car. This would have been number 11. This just missed the cut. Obviously, a lot of people would have had this one on their top 10 list. This is also taken at the International Motorsports Museum just a couple weeks ago. Obviously, single car team being able to win the championship. In that time of the sport, monumental. And then, unfortunately, obviously, Alan passed the next year along with Davey in 93. So, and just the orange, man. The orange and the white and the brown just hits so well. I actually have a pillow with this car. The Splash Mark Martin Valvoline scheme. So, Mark ran a lot of renditions of his Valvoline scheme. The Splash edition of it, it was kind of with the times then, right? You had the NFL hats with the Splash. Major League Baseball did a little bit with it. We even seen the Rusty scheme that I had in my list, had the Splash on the quarter panel. Just a sign of the times, man. This is as 90s as it gets, and I absolutely love this scheme. I also was going to put the Winn-Dixie Mark Martin scheme as an honorable mention. I'll just say that one. Mark ran a lot of good schemes. And then this one, you never seen it coming. Shout out my father for this one that I forgot about. Brought back some really good childhood memories. It is my only Busch car that I have on my list. Jeff Green's Neswick car. And he ran it in a Chevrolet and a Ford. Obviously, we know which one I picked. But the yellow with the navy blue and then the brown milk down the side of the car. Man, now, you talk about 90s with the Mark Martin scheme. This is as 2000s as it gets. And I absolutely love this paint scheme. It takes me back to good memories as a child. Obviously, Jeff Green was a Busch Series champion. And this is one of the more notable paint schemes and car numbers and cars that he ran in the Busch Series. So my dad sent me this one. He was like, does Busch Series schemes count? I was like, I'll put it in my honorable mention. So we got it here. That's all for me for my honorable mention.
And I love that scheme too. And it is also Scott Riggs drove that car once Jeff Green went to the Cup Series. That's who was driving when I started watching the sport. You got a lot of them in there that was really good. I didn't go through that many honorable mentions. Just think off the top of my head. The Winn-Dixie car, like you said, is an unbelievable car. The my mind went blank on me. The Dale Jr. Mountain Dew car that he drove at Talladega when he unfortunately had a concussion in 2012. I love that car. I loved a lot of Mountain Dew cars as juniors, but I'm going to go to the one that I chose to stick with because, to be honest with you, if I would have kept trying to pick them out, I could have changed the list like 30 times. So there's just a lot of iconic paint schemes. And I will say this. You didn't hurt my feelings when you said something about the diecast thing. The only difference is you buy every T-shirt you find, though. I buy diecast.
That's true.
You buy T-shirts, I buy cars.
Hey, you know why? Because the podcast. You guys are going to get to see all my racing T-shirts and my hats. They're not just decorations. I do wear them. That's true.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find some. I'm going to have to start buying T-shirts now just because of the podcast. I don't know. They might be cheaper than some of these diecasts I've bought.
Hey, to be fair, and I've said it on here, we've talked about this. We'll get to your honorable mention here shortly. Just one thing. I am big on there's so many talented drivers and there's so many likable personalities in the field now that, man, I just believe in if I like the guy, I'm going to buy a shirt. But I don't just like everybody. There are certain guys that I don't like. But I'm kind of getting turned on some guys that I have liked. But anyway, that's for a story for another day. But anyway.
My honorable mention is a paint scheme that a lot of people that was a fan in the mid-2000s know. But what they may not know is for one season, this paint scheme was on a truck. It is Harvick's paint scheme that he ran with GM Goodrich from 03 through 06 on Matt Crafton's truck from 2004. I don't know why. That paint scheme was good to me, but I love it on the truck. I don't know why. I just remember when you get older, you have some adult responsibility. You can't just sit there and watch races, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday every weekend.
I do, to be honest.
Huh?
I said I do, but
Well, I record them, but you can't watch them live.
That's true.
The wife likes to go eat sometimes and go to a movie, but back then I literally sat there on Friday night and on Speed Channel. Man, do I miss Speed Channel the way the coverage was back then, and would watch this car. Now Matt didn't win no races in it, and this was when KHI. It was before KHI really became KHI. They were still new. They were trying to get it started good, and Matt was young and inexperienced. And he wasn't a champion like he is now, a 3-time Cup Truck Series champion. And I just always loved that paint scheme for some reason on a truck. And and this was one of them auction wins that you brought with Ken Murray. And I saw it on there, and I just had to get it. And it's one of these days I'm going to send you a picture, Brett, with all these diecasts. They're going to be going from the floor to the roof and getting them shown off. But it is what it. I honestly almost put that 10th on my list, but I just couldn't do it. There's too many good Cup and iconic Cup schemes. But
that's a Garcia Museum. That truck is.
Mm-hmm. And it's a really good scheme. A lot of people probably don't really know the history of it. They see it and they probably think Kevin Harvick. I mean, why wouldn't you? But Jim Goodrich stepped up and sponsored that team that year for Kevin, and Matt Crafton drove it. And I always liked that paint scheme.
Well,
on the truck.
I like it better on the truck, too. I didn't like Kevin Harvick back then, so I much definitely like it better on the truck. I know what your number one is, and I don't think you know what my number one is. So I want you to go first.
Give me just 1 second. I'm trying to box a couple of these up here and there. That way I don't have to.
Look at this guy trying to preserve all his money that he's spending.
Oh, I take care of these things. They're my babies. This and the dog, Elvis, are my babies.
We love Elvis. If Elvis could actually talk, he'd be on the podcast more than me, to be honest.
Oh, I'm having to sit there and with my hand to keep him from getting in my lap. This one right here, though, and this diecast, I literally just got it 3 weeks ago. Not gonna say I'm gonna pay for it. It got paid for out of Cash App, not the bank account.
Is that because we didn't need one Mrs. Booth to find out what you paid for it?
Exactly. You know that $3 I stick in that Cash App account every paycheck? It finally built up enough. This is a race win version, though, in one of the most iconic, in my eyes, the most iconic paint scheme, definitely since the early 90s. This is a gorgeous diecast. They made it. They went back and made this when this driver was retiring in 15. If anybody knows, you automatically know what it is when I say 2015. But some people may not know that are new. That is the first year of the Monte Carlo. The paint scheme that made me fall in love with this sport. I mean, it is such a pretty car, and I cannot wait to get this one showed off in one of them glass cases. It is a gorgeous race car, and it is the race win car from just first Southern 500 victory in '95, and also in his first championship season. And that's not important to the paint scheme itself, but it's just so happened to be the diecast, and that's the reason I decided to show this one off because I'm proud of it. And I need to show it to somebody because I risked a lot to buy this.
He risked his marriage.
There's only one diecast that I've paid more than this for, and it's actually a Wood Brothers car that I showed you. It's got Matty D's autograph on it, Lynn, Eddie, and a couple. I can't even remember who all signed. It's like 5 or 6.
Leonard's on it too.
Yeah. I sent you pictures of it. I
almost bought one. I didn't. I never told you this. Way off topic. I found one because there's like I forget how many there were that they all signed them. Almost bought one. No, almost bought a David Pearson signed one for my dad. But my dad told me not to spend that much money or he wouldn't let me in his house. So.
Well, thank goodness somebody else outbid me because I tried to get a David Pearson one. Luckily, I got outbid. I was so thankful after I lost that bid.
Yeah, I think that's the most.
And it's the most I've ever paid for one. I think I paid. I ain't gonna say that out loud. No.
I do think the Rainbow Warrior scheme though is the most iconic paint scheme of all time. Just what that year meant. I mean, he going even back to '94, right? He won the 600 in it, winning the first ever Brickyard in that paint scheme. Like you said, he won 3 out of his 4 championships. In the Rainbow Warrior paint
50 wins.
Yeah. I mean, unreal. I mean, probably, in my opinion, what was it, 98? 98, Jeff Gordon? I mean, it was a best. Huh?
13 wins.
Yeah, I mean, that's the greatest season in the history of the sport, in my opinion. I know you can talk about 69 or 68, 27 wins for Petty, but who Jeff was going against to dominate like that, and they have a single-digit average finish, this is the greatest year in the history of the sport. So, yeah, that paint scheme's iconic, man.
And this diecast, too. I've got several Rainbow diecasts, but this one, the technology in making these diecasts got so much better when they went. But this is by far the best version of it I have, just because they got better at making it, in 2015 compared to making this car in '95. Back then, a lot of diecasts, they didn't take the time to put the details into it. This is probably the favorite diecast I own. I just need to get that John Hancock on it one day.
Yeah, my number one is not nearly as iconic. Quite frankly, the Elliott Sadler Wood Brothers paint scheme was at number one. I change it to this one. Paint scheme wise, I love this one more, but the 21 car is much more significant. It is the Mac Tonight.
I knew it.
94 Bill Elliott paint scheme. Bill didn't win a single race in this paint scheme. In fact, he didn't win a single race the whole time he owned his own race team and ran for McDonald's and ran the 94 car. But this car, man, it has been thrown back to, I think, two or three different times by two or three different drivers. Jamie McMurray being the most notable to do it. Guys have thrown back to it hadn't been McDonald's paint schemes. Just this car, everything that it symbolized. He also ran it on a Taurus as well in the late '90s. Once they went from T-Birds to Tauruses. And man, this paint scheme, dude, is just, I don't know. For me, it just does something. It does something when I look at this car. And really, I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of documentaries, even on stuff that's not about sports. Now, I do watch a lot of racing stuff. Obviously, you can tell Jonathan and I both do. I mean, we wouldn't know about all the stuff that happened before we were born if we didn't read and watch stuff. But I watched McDonald's Mac Tonight documentary, and it talked about how that ad campaign came about. And I think that's what got me so obsessed with Mac Tonight, and then obviously with this car, man. But the stars, I love navy blue. It's a big part of my wardrobe, and the yellow and red popping off of it. Bill Elliott being as iconic as he was, I mean, umpteen time most popular driver, however many times he won the award. It's got to be my number one based off of scheme alone, and that's what I went off of. So I'm sorry I didn't pick, to all the other Wood Brothers fans out there, I didn't pick a David Pearson paint scheme with the gold 21 on it, not even as an honorable mention. That's the only paint scheme that would rival this one. I know you're probably thinking, well, Brett, you didn't put in your top 10. Well, I don't think I'm doing that paint scheme justice if I don't put it number one. So that is the only car that would rival this, would be a David Pearson, maybe we'll say 1967, I think it was 1972, pardon me, 1972, when he ran 13 races in the Winston Cup Series that year, and he won 11 of them. He went 11 of 13. So it's the only paint scheme that will rival this one because of significance and that gold 21. But yeah, this is my number one.
And that's definitely a good scheme. It wouldn't be mine. I guess I like that scheme, but it's just not the same to me. Number one, I guess maybe because I'm not a Ford fan. Which you can see, I mean, I've got juniors on here twice on mine, and I grew up despising him, so I don't know. It's just, and what's crazy is I've got that car and have it autographed. And this is a funny story. I told Brett, one of my uncles gave me that car trying to get me to quit pulling for this one. So, I mean, that's why I don't like it, because I got somebody tried to trick my mind with it. So, maybe
for me, picking these paint schemes, I try not to go with my favorite driver. Now, I know what I picked at number 2 with Elliott, but I didn't necessarily try to go with my favorite driver. Obviously, we had natural biases with Davey, with Joey, with some other guys I had on my list. But, man, I mean, you grew up with Brandon Loftus. He hated Dale Sr., and I had him on here twice. I mean, he despised Dale Sr., and I guess I just grew up wanting to know the history about him and loved his paint scheme. So, yeah, I tried to base it on paint scheme alone, and I think that reflects with my number one. I know it is a Ford, but even if this wouldn't have been a Ford, that really had no significance, quite honestly. Yeah. I mean, this car didn't even want to race, right? So I absolutely love the paint scheme. But, yeah, I think –
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I think we both have a really good list.
Yeah, it was I think we both did too. And mine, even though I only picked one from my current favorite driver. I mean, but when you go to Gordon, I mean, the two paint schemes I showed accumulate for like 80 wins between the two of them. So they're two of the most iconic schemes, whether people like Jeff or not. And being a fan of them, obviously I like them. And when you went to Talladega and Daytona, he was real easy to spot no matter which one it was. But then I picked some that I think a lot of people would have never thought of. I seriously doubt there's many people that would have chose the Reese's car from Harvick. Or a lot of people now, I mean, depending on when they became a fan, didn't know that car existed.
Right.
I mean, who would have thought I was going to show you a Matt Crafton truck from 2004 that he didn't win a single race in, and got fired after the season because he didn't win a race.
Yep.
I mean, so there's just a lot of cool. Mine's different than most people. It ain't not. Other than the couple Gordons, will name any iconic. I'd say old school iconic. The Petty one was probably the most ones I went with.
I think when you look at paint schemes, though, man, there's so much that goes into it. For me, I tried to go aesthetic alone, but there's just something about if that car won a lot and it was a guy that you pull for and it was a beautiful paint scheme, obviously it just has a little bit more significance to you. I'm not going to lie to you. I've noted it here on the podcast, and I know we said we were doing 10, and we talked about 500 paint schemes in the podcast already. But one final note here that I even almost made my top 10 in my honorable mention. Well, I guess it makes my honorable mention now. I thought about putting the Ross Chastain Kubota paint scheme in here, which is wild to think about because of all the iconic paint schemes. I only had one. You only had one. I only had one next gen or whatever you want to call it now that we're running right now. Generation, what is it, 8 that I think we're running right now? Or 7? Gen 7. Mm-hmm. But I love that paint scheme. I'm really starting to like Ross. That one almost made it in here, but it did not. So, yeah, this has been a good one, man. If you like the history of the sport and you like looking at you like looking at pictures and diecast like Jonathan's showing you today, I think this is one that you definitely enjoyed. And, yeah, we're really looking forward to make sure you don't forget Saturday night, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, right here on Checker Past and Present YouTube page. We'll be at Bristol, which is where this photo was taken at, and where Elliott won that race in 01, and a lot of other diecasts we look at has a lot of significance to Bristol. So, Jonathan, I know you're looking forward to that one. You just gotta run top 10, and you'll be all right moving on to the next round.
Yeah, I'm wanting more than that. I want to be on the podium. I've put in probably about 300 laps so far this week.
Really?
Yeah, I've been trying to get that 5-car tuned in.
Let's talk about that for a few minutes. Yeah, let's talk about your preparation for Bristol.
Well, I got to think, everybody knows that if you've been following the owner of it, Ray Graham, a.k.a. Happy. Unfortunately, he lagged out last week. Had a little bit of an internet issue. We all have that every now and then. But he's helped me out some. He's helped me get a lot better racing, just showing me how to drive the tracks a little bit. I've only been racing online pretty much right at a year. Mm-hmm. I mean, and like 3 weeks later, I met the dude I'm doing this podcast with. So getting online was one of the best things I ever did, I think, as far as doing stuff like this. And, but I made a bunch of laps. I couldn't get it. I feel like me and you and our group of buddies ran a small league race there. And it would take me 20 laps for my car to come in. But at the end of the run, I was faster than all of y'all for the most part, I believe. But with these guys, it's a whole new level. You can't be off for 20 laps or you ain't going to catch up. So you got to figure out how to make that car be able to turn decent the first 15 laps, but then not be coming off the corner sideways. So, and that is hard to do at Bristol on the long run. Because when them tires wear out, if you start out a little free, it's going to be hard to hold on to. But I think I finally made some gains, and I don't know if I'm still on there, but what's today, Wednesday?
Yep.
Monday night I was on the weekly for Bristol, so I had made big gains on the top 10 laps. So I'm looking forward to it, and we have a good group of guys. It'll be fun racing. I can't wait to hopefully have you interview me on our channel.
I hope so, man. It's going to be fun when, obviously, Bristol is a place, obviously for a lot of drivers, there's a lot of places you hope to race at one day. For me, there's a lot of places, both in the racing spectrum and in a bat and ball sport perspective, that I hope I get to broadcast at. And obviously, if you followed me, this pro volleyball stuff was able to check off of some of those places. Maybe not specific arenas and stadiums, but the type of arena and stadium. Bristol is a place, though, and Daytona, obviously. Bristol and Daytona are the two tracks that I one day hope to call a race from. And even though I know it's, I know it's an online Heat 5 racing league, but to get to call that race Saturday night is going to be special for me. I hope you guys join us. There's a lot of great paint schemes. Speaking of paint schemes, there's a lot of great paint schemes in that field, and it's an elimination race. We're going to go from 10 to 8 in the playoffs. So make sure you join us. Jonathan's really tapping in. And he was the only guy that's ever been able to compete with me at Bristol on a consistent basis when we ran, because that was the one track that I tried to hone in every league I've ever ran in. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he runs and how the rest of the bunch runs, and it's going to be fun.
I feel pretty confident before we run again. You need to work a little. I think I done made my car better.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I didn't turn the PlayStation on for 2 months. So.
Well, what's bad is shout out to you. The base setup is your setup that you shared with me like 6 months ago,
Okay.
and I've just slowly tuned on it. So you're the reason if I wind up winning Saturday night, it started from your setup,
Well, I
and I
better hear
just
that
keep
in the
gradually,
interview.
huh?
I better hear that in the interview.
Oh no, you won't hear it then. That'd be too much credit.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, top 10 paint schemes. Obviously, Jonathan's was number one with Jeff Gordon. I went with Mac tonight. Looking forward to Saturday night, and that's all I got. Happy you guys joined us, and I hope you stuck around this long. It's been a long one, but if you're like us, you just like to sit around and talk racing, and hopefully you've enjoyed listening to racing today. So, and again, like Jonathan tells me all the time, and I don't really realize it because I think of where with the certain group of people I grew up at, now I live around, and I don't mean that disrespectful. I just mean how it is. Not a lot of people appreciate NASCAR, and a lot of the groups and around, a lot of people that have been around. So for us to find this niche group on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever else, and even on the NASCAR 85, there are groups of people and large groups of people that still appreciate the history of sport, and we thank you for joining us today. We really do.
Yeah, yeah, we love that you joined us, and I was editing the podcast out. If you've listened to it for the review of Coda, we went straight into it. We talked for another hour, and that could have been a podcast. I mean, we ain't doing this just trying to get some kind of attention. We do it anyway. I mean, we've been in here at midnight doing it on NASCAR 85, and I'm glad I met him, was able to get somebody to do this with me. It's fun. And I guess all I got to say is hope you come join us for GFR. Brett's doing a great job on that on Saturday nights. And we're going to try our best, I think, if our schedules allow it. Not this week because the race is actually Sunday night. But moving forward, we're going to try to get our review podcast out on Sunday nights the best we can. But this coming week will be Monday because they are racing Sunday night and it's Easter Sunday. But y'all have a great rest of your night, and we will see you next time. I hope to see you Saturday night. Later.